organization, advance. Before I go further, I want to say hello and wish you well. I hope that this advance finds you well and safe, and I hope that it finds your friends, your family well as well in these very challenging and tragic times. A summer like no summer we've ever experienced in this country, unfortunately. So we look forward to better times. Why do we call it an advance? Some of you might have been thinking, why does it say student organization advance? Well, I can't take credit for this phrase, and there is one person on this call who understands where this phrase is coming from. But from my institution I was at a long time ago, a student organization there would call their retreats advances. Because if you think of the word, retreat means to go backwards. Advance means to go forward. When we all gather, we're not gathering to go backwards. We're gathering to go forward. And that's what we're going to do this afternoon, is to help you continue to go forward with success in your student organization. This is a summer, and as we go into a fall, where our tagline is "Warrior Safe is Warrior Strong." And really, as we think about campus safety and health safety, we say that to be warrior safe is to be warrior strong, or to be warrior strong is to be warrior safe. Not only are we looking out for our fellow students, but our friends, our moms, our dads, our grandmas, our grandpas, our boyfriends, our girlfriends, our partners, our significant others, our husbands, our wives, our brothers, our sisters, our aunts, our uncles. We want to keep the entire community safe. And if you've tuned into the news late last night or early this morning, you saw the outbreak at University of North Carolina and some other schools as well. You've probably seen some disturbing videos of large gatherings with no safety. Let's work hard to keep Warrior Safe as Warrior Strong, and let's not let that happen to Wayne State. But it won't, because I know our students, and our students are fantastic, and we're going to have a great semester. With that being said, we are here for you. All of us that are on this call today are here for you, here to help you be successful. I am really excited about a new page that is on the Dean of Students Office page that was a collaboration with the Student Center on virtual engagement. And I want to give a shout out to Teresa from my team and Katie from the Student Center team, who co-chaired a virtual engagement committee this summer with the goal of engaging our students into a really great fall semester. And they brought together representatives from all over the campus. And engagement just doesn't mean student activities, it means academic success. The Academic Success Center was there. It involved many of our academic partners, faculty were on the team as well. We're really excited because we're all here to welcome you to fall semester. I just wanted to jot some notes. I want to tell you, we are so excited. We are looking at a record number of freshmen. This could very well top last year with the number of freshmen enrolling in the fall. And they are excited about being here, and they want to get involved, and they want to join your organizations. So there are a lot of students out there that are ready to join you. You'll see this year Warrior Rewards programs around events, Student Activity Funding Board money available for you to put on virtual events. Because one thing we know to be true is that we're not able to have any in-person programs, meetings, events, or activities, and that goes for everyone. I can't even have a staff meeting in person. We're hanging out on Microsoft Teams. But together, we'll all be there to virtually engage the campus. With that being said, I want to thank all the presenters in advance for this afternoon. I'm so excited. I want to thank Brandon for coordinating all this. There's just so many really cool things that are going to be happening that they're going to share today. I'm going to be on the chat throughout the afternoon. If you have questions about anything and everything, we've all taken areas that we can respond to. So feel free to put the question out there. With that, I'll hand it back to Brandon. I want to say again, hello, be safe, be well, be warrior safe, be warrior strong.
Thank you, Dr. Strauss. All righty. So next up, we're going to move swiftly into the program. I'm going to give a brief discussion on student leadership, myself and Ray. Renisha she'll introduce herself in a little bit. She should be on the call here. But before we begin, I want to engage you all a little bit more by asking you a poll. So let's learn about your RSO. So on your screen, a poll should pop up in a second. So let's see. So there's a few questions that are on your screen if you want to click on those things there, and then I'll show you the live results. Someone get in the chat box and see if that's popular. There we go. I see some going through. There we go. Got about half of you done with that. Got 53 people completed, 55, almost at the full 75. All right, so it looks like I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll. Hopefully everyone has that completed there. And I'm gonna share the results on the screen so you all can see the results. And I'm gonna talk about this for a little bit. So it's good to know that, I mean, the majority of you all are presidents and vice presidents, but it's good to see that we have some general members and other e-board members on the call as well. This is gonna be a very helpful presentation for you all to give back to your members, whether it's just your e-board or also those prospective members that Dean Strauss was talking about that might be first-year students or might be students that are trying to get involved in different ways while they're at home or wherever they are being virtual. The second question, so we're trying to see how we can engage your students, not just by hosting, a general Zoom meeting, as a lot of you seem to be doing, have general meetings, but you all have a lot of social gatherings, other programs, you have networking events, gaming events, maybe lecture series, tabling in the student center or elsewhere. We're going to talk about that, and I think Teresa might be able to mention some of that within the virtual resource guide and how you can kind of adapt some of the general meetings and events that you all do within your regular organization business to be virtual. We want to make sure that you're still being active as well. And then I wanted to see where you are for the question 3. How do you still plan? Like, do you still plan on holding these events? So the majority of you have some ideas in mind. Some of them need some help, and we're definitely going to be here to help you. But luckily, no one said they're not going to host any events or anything, so that's a good sign. We definitely want to be here if you want to host something. You've made the initiative so far to be on this call, so we're hoping that you all can get something out of this. And then last question. So I'm curious to know how you all transition your meeting. So this will help us too. So it looks like the majority of you all talked to previous members to see how your organization is functioning, how you learn. Maybe you were a previous member of that organization. Maybe you have a transition guide, or a lot of you also said, hey, you learn as you go, which is not a bad thing. You make your organization how you want it to be. So each organization can be unique year after year. Maybe there's certain bylaws or different things you want to adhere to, but especially this coming year, you're going to have to make it how you want to make that. So being a part of a student organization is not only there to essentially I mean, it's definitely there to meet new people and network and, you know, have these big events. But I want to say that it's also there to help you in the classroom, co-curricular. It's there if you are in an organization that might be like, for example, if you're a history major and you like to be in history club, or if you are in a fraternity or sorority and you're a biomedical major. Those are still there to still help you gain a network, not only for, I'm going to show you this slide, not only for your time at Wayne State, but also to continue your growth outside of the classroom, outside of Wayne State. So a lot of you want to kind of show you this career model, the 3 C's. So co-curricular experience, career transition, and then there's co-curricular experience, and then there goes into the professional development model. So using Bloom's taxonomy and using different skill development, we have an onboarding process, and you have students that are looking out to see, maybe you were there at one point as a first-year student. And then from there, you are trying to be involved and engaged. And there's a difference between being involved and engaged in the classroom and as well as being involved and engaged in a student organization. You might have some organization members who are coming to every meeting, but not necessarily participating in events or discussion. That are kind of just there, like to hear what's happening. And they might be involved in your organization. And then you might get to a student that's really engaged in the classroom or engaged in your organization, that, you know, do more, that want to be volunteering at different events, and that might also want to eventually be a part of that leadership that goes into being on the executive board or being a president of your organization. And then what happens is that you eventually will graduate from Wayne State, and hopefully from there, everything you've learned from your organization is not something that you just kind of throw away, but it's still in the back of your mind. And we want to make sure that it helps you as an individual by leading yourself and leading others, and then helping build that leadership. And I kind of look at this as giving back, in a sense, to not only what you're doing as a professional, but also what you're doing to give back to Wayne State as an alumnus as well. So you're doing all this in the green section, and then moving over to from the career section into professional development is you know, evaluating in yourself and giving back to what you once had that passion, hopefully still retain that passion for the future. So I just wanted to kind of keep that rolling in your mind. I don't want to make this super educational. I've been telling others about that. This is a lot of updates to give you all, but I wanted to keep this in your mind, flowing that being a student leader, as I once was at Wayne State, not only, you know, it's not just your 4 years or 6 years at the university, but it's also developing yourself as an individual and trying to give back to yourself in the future organization. So I wanted to briefly chime in and have Ray give some you know, feedback as well on that.
Hi, everyone. So Ray here, Coordinator of Student Life Wellness in the Dean of Students Office. You may probably know me if you've ever been to the W Food Pantry. That is my first baby. So I want to chime in and piggyback basically off what Brandon said, and just to continue to remind you guys that even though we are in a challenging period, it is also rewarding. Being a leader in during this time can help you enhance many skills. So you think about what you want your organization to do. You think about what you have done in the past. How can you transfer and translate that to virtual learning or virtual experience, as you want the current members and prospective new members to have. You want to, let me give an example. One thing that my students are doing for the food pantry, we usually do tabling, and I see that some of the organizations here do tabling. We're going to do a tabling virtually. What does that look like? Well, a lot of my students come from different backgrounds, so they're going to take what they're learning in class. So I have a public health student who focuses a lot on the nutrition, who partners with our nutrition student. So they're going to do a public health nutrition tabling event virtually, and we're going to do it on Instagram. So really looking at the different things that you utilize in your day-to-day, but also, as Teresa will mention later on, some really cool things in a resource guide that you can do through Zoom. Maybe it's through Teams. So those different meetings that you're going to have can be through Teams. Now is the time to really zone in on those skills. So if you are good at problem solving and you're trying to figure out how can I get new members, hey, now is the time for you to say, I'm a problem solver, let me figure this out. So then when you're going up for an interview for a job and they ask you what your greatest strength is, you're able to say, well, I'm a great problem solver. During the COVID-19 pandemic, I was X, Y, and Z, and I was able to do this, this, and that. So look at this time as a rewarding time instead of a challenging time. We, the members of the Dean of Students Office, will be here to assist you guys, but just look at it as ways that you can help build those skills that you already have, or some of those skills that you feel like could need some improvement. Yeah, that was my spiel. Brandon, you took a lot of myself. That was my spiel.
Thanks so much, Ray. And to not, I don't want you just all to hear from staff members. I wanted to tie in some students and get some student leadership experience on this call as well to see what students are doing. So I want to pass the mic over to continue this discussion a little bit. And if you all have any ideas in the chat box, feel free to continue to put that in here. We might be able to pop you on here as well. But I want Catherine and Amanda to hop on here. And I know Catherine's going to start off by chatting about what she has been doing with CAT and what leadership ideas and things and whatnot has been happening as well within the campus activities team as she's president. And then Amanda is going to chime in with her different organizations and her experience as an engagement navigator as well.
All right. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to share my screen quickly. All right. So I kind of wanted to touch on what I've been doing with CAT to make our programming that's virtual successful. So we started off in March, kind of like everyone else, figuring out what this crisis looked like and how we had to kind of adjust to make our programming successful. And then we've kind of spent the summer working really hard to perfect that model in hopes of making fall really great and successful. So a few major takeaways that I've learned through leading virtually is to keep meetings simple and consistent. So in person, CAT met about once a week for about an hour, and we decided for in the fall to kind of keep that structure of meeting weekly, but to change it to only about 30 minutes. Number one, we have less to talk about, and also who wants to be on a Zoom call for a long amount of time listening to someone just talk all the time. So we decided to kind of adjust that way. Another thing is to encourage webcam usage. In bigger meetings like this, obviously I can tell there's less people using their webcams, and I didn't do it when I wasn't talking. But if you think about it, your community meetings or your organization meetings are a lot smaller, and you should know all of those people. So I think it's a really good idea to just kind of at the beginning of a meeting, gently encourage everyone to turn on their video if they feel comfortable. An example is, this is kind of a slightly embarrassing picture in the corner from one of our meetings in March. But everyone's smiling, everyone's engaged, so you can kind of see in a picture that is the community environment you're going to want to create for your whole meeting when it's online. The last thing is to screen share a visual aid. So something as simple as this little PowerPoint, it's nice to give people something else to look at besides just your face when you're talking. A couple other key takeaways is that consistent communication is really key. Outside of your meetings, I know a lot of you talked about how in the poll you use a lot of other ways to engage your members. I think email is really important, but also text or GroupMe. That's kind of where smaller conversations take place, or things are more casual and you're maybe talking about something off topic. I think those are just as important to kind of foster as a leader versus just these are the 5 things that we need to talk about. Kind of with that said, another thing is during your meetings to encourage discussion. So I'm only talking for a few minutes, but if I was talking for a longer period of time, I would probably split some of that to be a discussion just so students are engaged and they feel like their voice is being heard. So for CAT, for example, we've decided for the first 15 minutes of our meetings, we're kind of going to go over all the business things, and then the last 15 minutes will be more icebreakers and discussion based, just to make sure that everyone feels really welcome and heard and included. Another thing going off of that is side conversations. So they're kind of a little more awkward to foster in a virtual environment, but if you think about it, if you're at a meeting and before the meeting starts, you're talking to the person next to you, or you're walking out with them and you're talking, or there might be a lull and you're chatting or making jokes. And I think that that's really important if that happens virtually, to kind of allow that space for that, even if it's just a few minutes, and then to kind of rein it in, but not just shut it down completely, because I don't know, if you want your organization to feel like a family and community, you kind of need to be able to talk about things that aren't necessarily completely organizational based all the time. The last thing is to actively use social media. At least for CAT, we did use social media a lot, but we also advertised a lot at our in-person events. And so it's been a little bit of a challenge to kind of only focus on our Instagram and on our social media. And I would also encourage you to use Get Involved, which I think they'll kind of touch on a little bit later in the presentation. The last thing is icebreakers that students won't hate. So put up a hand in the chat if you don't like icebreakers, for the most part, which is me and kind of how I was before I was a leader. But then I kind of realized that they're actually really important, and you can find ones that are actually fun and that students will enjoy, and they won't feel like that you're a professor on the first day of class, which everyone hates that. So a few easy ones are to share your phone lock screen and kind of explain why you chose it. That one's super easy. Two truths and a lie is also a really good one that is also easy and kind of doesn't really put anyone on too much of a spot. A cool one we've discovered is called Scriblio. So it's a website and everyone signs up, and then one person has to draw something and then everyone else kind of looks in and figures it out. As you can see by this kind of creepy guy with sunglasses, but it does kind of show what the website looked like. The last two are called Jackbox games. So if you have access to that to share your screen and have everyone play, or a Kahoot, you can find tons of free ones. Some of them might be geared towards your organization, and that's a really cool idea to kind of start the meeting off or end the meeting with some Kahoot music, a couple rounds, and I don't know. I think that these are important, and I think you'll notice that the more you play them, the more students won't dread them. They'll actually kind of look forward to them and the outlet that they provide. So that's all I had. I put my email on here. Feel free to ask me any questions or reach out. I think I've worked really well with my team, and they'd be helpful or be happy to answer any questions too, but we've learned a lot, and I'd be happy to share any of that knowledge with all of you in your organizations. So I'll stop sharing my screen, and then I'm happy to answer any questions in the chat.
Thanks, Catherine. And I wanted to segue briefly to keep on the same student topic. If you have any questions for Catherine, go ahead and put them in the chat. But I want Amanda to hop on here, who's an engagement navigator, and she'll briefly tell you what that means. And then she'll talk about what way she's involved on campus as a student leader, and then as well talk about different ideas that you might have for student leadership and ways to engage your members as well.
Hi, everyone. So yeah, basically when I first got this position, it looked a lot different than it does now. You know, we were thinking about working with students and showing up to all of their events and just doing what we can to get everybody involved. But now that it's on a virtual platform, my role has largely become figuring out how to help students utilize this platform well. And I sort of wanted to stem off of what Ray was saying earlier about seeing this virtual environment as an opportunity instead of an obstacle. For example, I am the Vice President of Philanthropy for Delta Zeta, and every year we host a 5K. I had a lot of it already planned, you know, the location, the date, and everything. And now that the pandemic is still going on, we had to transition it over to a virtual setting, which I'm actually pretty excited about because some of you may know that I traveled to Portugal last year, and I made a lot of friends while I was over there, and I've been talking to them ever since, and they would have never been able to come show up to the 5K in person, but now they've already they're ready to register and run a 5K over there. So that's just an example of how having this virtual setting, you can open up doors to so many other opportunities and participants that never have been able to show up in person. So yeah, I know that you guys all probably have in-person events that you host each year. So I want to challenge you to, instead of postponing those or canceling them, but to find a way to host them virtually or in a different setting. And if any of you have examples of those or questions to see maybe if we can brainstorm about that, I'd love to help out. I'll also throw my email in the chat right now so you can jot it down. Sorry, that's all caps. Does anybody have any annual events that they were maybe struggling with, trying to figure out how to put it into a virtual setting that we could maybe use an example and try to brainstorm together? You can type it in the chat or say it out loud, whatever you're comfortable with. Kimberly, go ahead and type what that might be. A fashion show? Are you still trying to find a way to do that virtually?
Yes, that would be great if we could find out a way to do that virtually.
Okay, so the one thing that me and Catherine both attended this summer was NACA. It's basically this great conference organization that used to have these leadership conferences in person, but they found a way to put them online. And we did a lot of work with multimedia presentations and events. So one challenge that they gave us was to find a way to host an event in person and online. So multimedia is basically having multiple platforms for something. I believe Brandon's about to show the virtual guide that we put together for best practices for organizations. And I actually linked the example that we did for that. So I think my best advice would be to plan the organization as if it's happening in person, and then figure out all of the in-person aspects that you wouldn't be able to have. Like, let's say you're gonna have it in the Student Center ballroom, and instead change that platform to Zoom or Microsoft Teams or something like that. And then, you know, before we would have posted flyers on like the State Hall wall or in the Student Center, and instead say like, let's put it on Facebook pages and Instagram pages and things like that. And, you know, you just have to look at each aspect individually, and that's what makes it a lot easier to digest, because I know the concept of making an entire event virtual when it's usually in person can be overwhelming at first. Does that help at all?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Does anybody else want to share?
Just for time's sake, if you have any other suggestions, or if you have any other, if you need some support with the Engagement Navigator team, they can help try to brainstorm or help you in a sense try to get those in-person programs held virtually. So feel free to reach out to Amanda. Her email is in the chat box, and we'll kind of just go from there and try to see how we can help you out. And then with these events, such as like a fashion show and things like that, Ryan will talk later on to see how potentially you can get SAFB funding to do some virtual programming as well. So this is all a great segue into what Teresa is actually going to be talking about next. So first off, I want to say thank you so much to Catherine, Ray, and Amanda for showing us and giving those feedback and those questions and suggestions on how to still plan a program, still have events, and still have an organization at Wayne State, even though we're online. But I want to segue next into Teresa really quick, who's going to be, yeah, there we go. We're going to talk about our student organization resource guide.
Awesome, thank you. I'm really glad to be here, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm glad everyone could be on here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So I put in the chat a link to this virtual resource guide that has been mentioned several times now, so I'm excited to share it with you. If you want to click that link, please do. I will also show you how to get there from the Dean of Students page. So as you can see on my page, we're at doso.wayne.edu. Here, there's a lot of resources just in general. I would recommend you find yourself and get familiar with these. But under student organization resources, here we have a lot of our typical resources that are very relevant during the year and still relevant now. But we wanted to make sure that we provided you specific resources for this virtual and remote environment that we are now in. And so over here, you can see virtual resources. And this guide was put together by several different departments. The entire university really came together to create this for everyone here and for all student organizations. And so it's a great collaboration piece that the university worked on together. And so the very beginning of this resource guide, you have some links that will drag you down to where they are in the specific document. And so, for example, if we want to talk about event funding, it hops me right there. That's just for you to know and for you to use when you plan on looking back at this. But I'm going to go through and kind of talk a little bit about each piece and how it can help you in your organization. So we know that every student organization needs to recruit, and typically we spend August and September recruiting for our student organizations. Right here, we have some tips and tricks. Of course, we still have FestiFall. That's probably, and I know I advise the campus activities team, that is one of the places where we recruit most of our members. So
Hey,
I would
Teresa?
recommend that.
Sorry, I think your screen share kicked off, or different screen came on.
Oh, these are all my documents and my contracts that I have to do. 1 second, y'all. Thank you. Here we go. So, is that good? Thanks.
Perfect.
Great. So we have attend your FestiFall. Like I said, attend virtual FestiFall. We will go over that later. Use the Get Involved platform. Again, Heather and Brandon will talk about that in a bit. So sorry to anticipate that. But also, as Catherine and Amanda had talked about, hosting virtual events. So host your information sessions, host a coffee hour, and promote that on Get Involved as an event. Use social media to promote those events. And hopefully you can get some trickle in attendance for people who are interested in your organization. I'll also say Ray, who talked earlier, put in the chat that she'd be happy to help anyone with recruitment, and I would take her up with that offer if I were you all. So some virtual engagement and event platforms that the university has available to you as a student are Zoom Pro. So this is what we're using right now. Where you can collaborate with other people, you can share your screen, you can annotate your screen, you can use polls, you can see, is it up to 25 people at a time when everyone has their video on. And so that's a really great tool to use for general body meetings or events where you want to encourage discussion and participation. So right here, this kind of just talks about some of the benefits, and then if you click on this link here, it'll take you to CNIT's page to learn more information about your Zoom account and what you have available to you. So Microsoft Teams is also a fantastic tool that the university provides in your Microsoft suite. And again, more information on how to access it is going to be at the link at the bottom. But we use Microsoft Teams a lot as an office in a department and an organization. And so I would say this tool is best for small meetings where you can see up to 9 people, but of course people can have their video off. And this allows for you to also share documents and tools, or just different, you can also have polls on here too. So this just allows for more collaboration on working pieces and more project management than I would say just meeting space, but also has that meeting space component. And then lastly, we have Microsoft Teams Live, and this is a larger software that is more of a webinar-based software platform, and this is not accessible to everyone. It is only accessible by request. And so we are working with the Student Center on providing this to student organizations, and so you can see at the bottom, you can contact Megan if you are interested in using this type of platform, but this would be great for the campus activities team is doing a comedy show for homecoming week. And so we will most likely use Teams Live because we won't have that discussion based. It'll just be kind of more of a watch and listen, more like a webinar. And so if you don't really want audience participation, or you just want Q&A, this would be a good option for that. And it also allows, as you can see on the screen, for 10,000 people to participate. And so it's a much wider, have a wider availability. Something we have talked about a little bit with the other presenters in this advance is just how to have your meetings, how to communicate, and how to collaborate with individuals in your organization. And so again, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, great options for how to have your general body meetings, how to work collaboratively online, OneDrive, which is like a shared drive for documents and spaces. And we've got Microsoft Teams, which I've already touched on. And then if your organization uses Gmail or Google, Google Drive is a great place. It just depends on who your audience is. Some collaborative tools. These are just a couple that we've pulled. AutoDraw is a really easy software, or just website actually, that you can play Pictionary with. So I think that popped up, and I can draw pictures. So that would be a great option for Pictionary or to use as a whiteboard. Also Miro, I think that's how you pronounce it. And this is like a sticky board and whiteboard mind map type of website that allows for you to have some more collaborative and sharing back of ideas opportunities. So those are here, and of course this is a working document, so there might be more collaborative tools as we continue to meet and have this virtual space grow, but those are two right now. Of course, as Catherine alluded to, community with your organization members is super important. You need to find a way to do that. You can use meetings. That's a great outlet for talking to get together, but also encouraging to use messaging, GroupMe. You can use Zoom for conference calls if you don't want to do the video feature. So that's also a great option, especially if you're doing like your organization does interviews for different executive board positions. Maybe you want to set up conference calls. I know that's something we do in the campus activities team. Of course, also use what your members know. So if you are a student organization that are big gamers, maybe you want to use Discord as the main way to communicate with your team. Or if you want to use House Party, I don't know very much about either one of these applications, to be completely honest. I feel old, but House Party I know has games that you can like play and you can do during the meetings. That might be a good option for your organization as well. So meeting tips and tricks. Some of these have already been touched on by other members of the presentation team, but I will click on this Icebreakers PDF because this is a great resource. I don't know if I can open my tab. I'll just do this. A great resource to use for icebreakers. There is about 10 icebreakers on here on this PDF that will really provide some good conversation and just like learning about one another for your organization members. I really encourage my students in our organization to do games and to get to know one another in our meeting space. And so this is something we will be doing a lot of. They're all different times. And so take a look at that whenever you have the chance. And I will also just reiterate, I think using a video camera in small group meetings is super, super helpful. It really makes your members feel like they are there together. And then also it really helps hold each other accountable for paying attention to the meeting. I know I'm guilty as charged too. Like when I have my camera off, I tend to tune out just because I don't have any sort of eyes on me to watch what I'm doing or that I'm paying attention. And you can read the rest of those tips on here later. I'm going to skip over event funding because Ryan will talk about that. That's on here. So virtual activities and event ideas. This is just a running list of some activities and virtual events that you can do with your student organization. You can host for other students to join you, or you can host for just your members. So I would recommend that you take a look at these. Many of them are linked. So you can see here, this will take you to a website that is a vendor that hosts escape rooms. There are also websites, and maybe I should add that to this page too, of how you can create your own virtual escape room. So Google is your friend too. I would totally recommend Googling that. Different paint tutorials, how to do a listening party, how to host karaoke. Just some really great ideas that are fun and engaging for students. Of course, speakers are always good. Okay, now virtual event best practices. So we worked with WSU Special Events, and Amanda and Golda, who are engagement navigators, helps with this. And so something to keep in mind when you are planning a virtual event is you want to make sure you have a run a show, just like you would when you're in person and you're planning an event. You're going to include your virtual aspects. So like who's going to be your co-host, who's going to watch and navigate the chat, who's going to share the housekeeping rules, all these types of things you want to consider when you are planning your virtual event. Also, consistency is key. So if you remember logging in and waiting in the waiting room for this meeting, Brandon had set up the waiting room to be the Wayne State logo. He added his office number. And so that is a great feature that you can add to help students realize what they're going to be getting out of the experience that they're joining. Of course, have templates, have slides, and have a final slide that promotes your future events or promotes other events on campus. You can never have too many shameless plugs for what you're doing. Practice, practice, practice. This is so key when it comes to virtual programs. I know when we do trivia, we practice the entire trivia beforehand with our small group before we go live with a larger audience. You want to make sure that technology is working because technology is hard and mistakes happen, and even in-person mistakes happen, but we can try and alleviate this by practicing ahead of time. Safety. So I'm sure you've heard stories about Zoom bombing or bad things happening on these virtual events or meetings. So I would say Microsoft Teams and Zoom, the software platforms that are provided by the university, are relatively safe. You have to use your Wayne State Access ID and password to log into these systems. And so you know that it's going to be a Wayne State person who's with you. And you also have accountability with that as well, because then if something were to go wrong, you can hold that person responsible because you know their name and their access ID. You should and can create passwords for your events. Would recommend that. Something that's not on here, but maybe they'll talk about later too, is using Get Involved to share your events. So if you have a Zoom link for your general body meeting or for your trivia night, I would recommend that you post that as an event on Get Involved, and then you share that link in that event and then share out your event. And because you can set your event that it is only members of the WSU community who are able to log into that event to get the link. And that way that password protects and authenticates your event for future use. Event day procedures, of course, enter your meeting about 30 minutes before. Ask your co-host to do that as well. Don't assume that they're just going to do that. Have another practice around. Make sure you leave your attendees in the waiting room until everyone is ready. That is key. Have a contingency plan. If for some reason I were to get my bad internet connection and disconnect, someone needs to have my phone number so that they can get a hold of me. Make sure that you always have another co-host to take over and dedicate someone to maybe the technical aspects of your events. Engagement, this is key. I would totally recommend using the chat function in your events like we are doing today. It helps keep people engaged and keep discussion moving. And also, if you have incentives available to you as a student organization, gift cards, even if they're like $5 to Starbucks or Amazon, are enticing. So try and use them as you can. Inclusion, of course, it's super important to make sure that your events and your participants all feel welcome. Diversify your content. Think about others and what other people want when you are planning your virtual events. Think about accessibility. If you can use closed captionings, use closed captioning. Make sure your content is mobile friendly and be flexible. Create many ways for students to engage. Multimedia, of course, you can think of different ways to engage students that are not just virtual events, kind of like Amanda said, hosting a virtual 5K. There are some other ideas on here. If you're a community service organization, Volunteer Match does have virtual options. Promoting and advertising organizational activities, tips and tricks. You guys can read these on your own. The only thing I'll highlight is request OSO promotion for your event. This is a great form for you to fill out if you would like our assistance in promoting your event on social media, in our newsletter, and so forth. And then the Student Center will be talking about this too, so I will not talk anymore about that. But that is the Virtual Resource Guide. Sorry I read so much and I talked a lot. Hopefully you got something out of it. there's a lot of really good information. If you have more questions, if you have something you want to share on this, please send it my way. I'm sure we could get it on here. But yeah, thanks. I'm gonna stop sharing.
Thanks so much, Teresa. Let me get my presentation back on here. All right, so up next we have using Get Involved with Heather and myself. I'm gonna have Heather talk for most of this and I'll chime in where needed, but you all have probably used, I hope you have used the Get Involved platform. That's the platform that we utilize to share events and to manage our organizations, but I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here and then have Heather hop on, who's the Associate Director for Student Life Marketing in the Dean of Students Office.
Okay, let me get my screen sharing up. If you can, oh, hold up, share screen. There we go. It's getting there. It's loading slowly. If you all would like to, in the chat box, just kind of let us know if there's any specific features that you want me to kind of cover in this short 15-minute or so time. I can go a little bit more in depth, and then Brandon, since I can't see the chat while I'm sharing, could you just kind of let me know that they're there? So everybody, this is obviously the Get Involved page. This is going to be a very nice box. We're going to keep this a little alert box up for you with student organization quick resources. This student organization resource page is one of the ones that Teresa showed you earlier. That'll get you quickly to all resources. It's this big gray bar is right in the way of everything for my tabs, but we'll make this work. So that will take you directly to our student organization resources page. Some big ones to look at would be this promoting your event. You can promote at any time in our Get Involved newsletters. You can request us to share on social media. I need to update this because I think we've figured out our print and digital marketing. This will not be available, at least for the fall, because we're not doing a whole lot of print and digital marketing on campus this semester. So we'll primarily be focusing on the newsletter and in social media. But you can put in a promotion request for your events at any time, and we will work with you on getting that information up. Just do it in a timely manner so that we have time to juggle any other requests or get any information if we need it. Other things on here would be checking out the training page. So a lot of the stuff that I talk about, we obviously are not doing in-person training, but you can request a Zoom training now. We can go to our trainings page, and the training page will go over a lot of the Get Involved resources. For example, how to manage your roster. We've got YouTube videos as well as screenshots and descriptions of how to do everything in Get Involved. So I'm going to jump back over into Get Involved real quick. So this is the Explore page. This is kind of the public view of everything. It lists your memberships, if you're RSVP'd for any of events, and then it also lists all events and news. If you are signed up for our rewards programs, they will show up here. Sign up is coming out soon. We're finalizing some of the details. And we also have some quick campus links on here. So for example, if you're going on campus, the daily screener is there for you in the Get Involved platform if you can't ever find it. It's lots of places on campus. So if you are a member of an organization, you will show up in here. You can quickly click on that page and click on Manage Organization here, or you can come up in the waffle menu and hit Manage here. It doesn't really matter which way you go. My preference is the waffle menu, but other people's preference is to go to their page first. Completely up to you. So from here, you can just click on your organization if you want to go in and manage it. From here, you come in here, you'll have your toolbox of all the organization tools that you have access to. Some of you who are not presidents may not have access to manage any of the content for your page. I know that was a question earlier. Presidents and treasurers are given all access into the page automatically. After that, you will need to, actually let me go to a student organization. Let me go to the campus activity. Let's go to campus activities team. Let me go to an actual student organization real quick so you guys can see some things. For example, the FestiFall sign up will be here, but we'll explain that a little bit more later. Go back to the roster. So from here, you can see everybody who's in your organization. It is very, very useful to have everybody in your organization on your roster, not just your e-board or who you want as administrators for your Get Involved page. That's important because you can message your organization directly through here without needing to collect emails somewhere or text messages somewhere or anything like that. I'll do that one in a second. But right now we're going to manage positions. So for example, the president and treasurer or slash finance have all access automatically. And you can click on that at any time. You won't be able to edit this, but you can see that they have all access. But if you wanted to say, for example, you want your secretary to have access. Currently they have no access, and my cat is coming up to join us. Currently the secretary has no access to any of the tools in Engage. But maybe we want them to have access. Maybe we want them to have all access. But most of the time for these other e-board positions, they probably only need limited access. Limited access gives you the power to grant them access to specific tools within Engage, or Get Involved rather. Engage is the platform name. We brand it as Get Involved. If I switch back and forth, I apologize. So as a secretary, maybe they only need access to documents. Maybe they just need to view the documents, or maybe they actually need to be able to upload and edit documents. That will be up to you. Maybe the secretary needs to have access to forms so that they can build forms, or maybe they just need to view the form submissions when they come in. Those are all types of things. Every single one of the tools has access to view or full access. The reason why we didn't automatically grant these types of access to different positions is because we wanted to give the power to the student organizations to decide what access people needed for their organizations. So if you ever need to grant access to a specific person, so for example, maybe Alexis is now the secretary and she needs access to documents, you would just change them to secretary. Secretary is not here. Anyway, you would select that position and hit save. Secretary is obviously just not one of the positions that Kat decides to use right now. So if there's any questions in the chat box, Brandon, just let me know. Messaging, like I said, is another really great feature of, and it looks like they are using it. You can create relay messaging within Engage. You just hit create relay. You're going to select which positions you want to relay. So maybe you just want to send out to the members because all of the e-board already knows. Or maybe you want to select all members, or maybe you just want to select your e-board. I'm going to select, we'll just select our e-boards for right now. Okay. As you add people here, you can, you'll see the total number of recipients pop up. You can also select specific members. So maybe you want the e-board plus Dr. Strauss to get this email. You hit close, it jumps up to 14, and then you give it a subject. Actually, this is a test is a good one. Okay, I apologize, Teresa, for messing with your page. And then you would hit generate, and then you would copy this really awkward looking @relayengagedcampuslabs.com email address. And then you can use your Wayne State account, whatever email account you're using for your student organization. If you just send it to this, it'll send to all of the members that you selected as recipients. This is a quick and easy way to message your organization. A note about this is that once you create the relay, that relay is only active for 24 hours and it lets you know what time it'll expire. So then the next time you need to send a message out, then you would have to create a new relay message. It does this because, like, for example, between this testing one and this student alumni trip, maybe more members were added to your organization, or maybe members dropped, or maybe a member got a new officer position. That's why it only sets for 24 hours. You can also send text, but that would also rely on students personally putting their cell phone number into their Engage profile. You may want to encourage your student organizations to do that, but it is not required. It's not data that Wayne State collects. If they do put it in there, it's not something that we are going to be using for anything other than if your organization's using the text messaging feature. Okay. Other important ones in here that you guys will probably want to use.
Hey, Heather.
Yep.
Question about the relay messaging from someone in the chat box, which you can
Yep.
clarify on. Can this messaging system also work as an email platform, or is it only specific to messaging?
So what happens is when you send an email out, it says it's from that really awkward Campus Labs email, but then any responses that come back go directly to whoever created it. So I created this one, so it's automatically any responses will go back to me. Does that kind of answer the question?
Yep, thanks.
Okay. Another tool that all of you probably want to know about is the events feature. And I actually have the advanced already pulled up so you can kind of see the back end of an event. So once an event is created on here, you can see that this is an online location. So we've put the Zoom link in here. We've said it's available to the public. This is the access code. So when we are back live on campus and we can do things again and we are face-to-face, this access code is going to be a great one for you to use. On our trainings page, if you watch the event check-in app and track attendance video, it'll show you how to use that. At the beginning of, end of spring, beginning of summer, the Engage company, they brought us this because they knew we all needed a virtual way to track attendance, which is how all of you are tracking your attendance today. And I see 59 people have tracked their attendance today, so thank you guys very much. If Brandon, you want to throw this attendance URL back into the chat box to gather anybody else who we've missed, that would be great. All you have to do is hit this copy, and you can throw it into any of the messaging tools that you're using for your meeting. You can put it into Zoom, into Teams, Facebook Live, whatever tool you're using for your virtual event. You throw this in there, and as long as they're a Wayne State student, they will get tracked. If they're not already logged into a Wayne State system, it'll have them log in with their Access ID and password real quick, and then it'll track their attendance. If you're using Zoom or Teams, you're typically already logged in with your Access ID, so it'll automatically do it, which I know some of you in the chat box were like, did it track my attendance? And yeah, the answer is yes. What happens is it takes you to the Get Involved homepage, and there's a little tiny blue bar. I tried to take a screenshot of it, but it went away too quickly. But it says your attendance has been tracked for this event. It's just a little blue bar that shows up at the bottom of the screen that you probably missed because it's at the bottom of the screen. But that's a great way to track attendance. To view attendance, you can come into here. And this is also a great thing to use for your meetings, because you can also track if somebody's been absent or if they've been absent but excused. And you can also add a comment. So maybe they're excused because so-and-so had a doctor's appointment. Thank you, Noah, for having me use you as an example up at the top. But this is a great way to maybe take a little bit of assessment to see who's going to your events. We've got 63 people attended now. Thank you, everyone. Another reason for you to track attendance is so that you can get a little bit of an assessment. How did your event go? That kind of thing. You can automatically hit send notifications after an event, or when you're creating your event, there's a little checkbox that you can click off that says send once attendance is tracked. And it automatically will send them this 5-star rating. If you want, when you're building out your event, you can also add questions. So if you want to know specifics about the event, like just a quick poll, you can add questions to your event. It sends notifications. And then once you have any feedback, you can hit export feedback. And then you can get some sort of response from how people enjoyed your event or didn't enjoy your event, so you know how to make corrections for the future. So those are all tools that you guys can use for your event. Brandon, is there anything else that you think I should cover from the toolbox?
I think that's about it. Potentially, you talked about events, yeah, how to create them, things like that. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Cool.
Yeah, just I'm not sure if you mentioned it. Just make sure we're also using Access ID emails is very big. That's very big to use as well.
Yes, that is one. The system uses your Access ID email. If you put in like johnwayne@wayne.edu, it's not going to work because it thinks you're a separate person from your Access ID email. So just keep that in mind when you're inviting members to your organization. Another thing that I want to mention here is this elections tool is a great way for having different elections within your organization, whether it's your e-board, or you can use it for like polling. You can create an election for your members to ask them what their favorite food is. You can use it for small things like that or big things like who the next president's going to be. We have tips on how to do that on our training page again. And if you ever have any questions, I'm the elections coordinator for the university, and I am happy to help you out with any of these tools really. But elections is kind of what I specialize in at the moment too, so. Cool. I think that's it for
Someone
me.
asked the question, is election tab the only way to create a poll?
Within Get Involved, correct, yes. You can also do that within your social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, those kinds of things. But within Engage, Get Involved, that is the only way to create a poll.
Cool, thanks so much, Heather. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen again. A lot of useful information, a lot of useful tips within that platform, and Get Involved. Like Heather said, reach out to us if you have any questions about any of those things that she just talked about. But up next, we have updates from the Student Center. We have Katie and Megan who are gonna give some brief updates, and then we're gonna move right into building community as well within that.
Great, thanks, Brandon. Let's see, I'll go ahead and share my screen. So Megan and I are here to really take a pause from all of the nuts and bolts and great resources that the Dean of Students Office team has really shared with you to really just talk about you all as student leaders. You're not only leaders for your organizations, you're leaders for the campus. So from the Student Center, we wanted to share with you some of the important updates of changes to our facility and ways that you can still be involved with the Student Center and engage through the Student Center virtually. So I wanted to start off by sharing some of the changes that are happening with the building itself. Everyone can see my screen, right? Just holler if you can't. So basically the overall plan is there's been some different physical changes as well as operational changes to how we are functioning as a building. So wanting to officially announce that we are reopen as of this week. So for those of you that are on campus or near campus, you are able to come into our building. And we have some new measures that we wanted to make sure to share with you. So to start, we wanted to make sure that you are aware that we have actually removed a lot of furniture throughout the building in order to ensure that 6 feet or more of social distance between groupings of chairs. And so we took out a lot of different lounge furniture, moved it into storage throughout the entire building, including working with our partners in Aramark for the food court area too. We also have some awareness signage throughout the building related to maintaining social distance, wearing face coverings, which was required throughout the building. And also want to make sure to mention too that we've really upped our game in terms of what cleaning, disinfecting, and sanitizing looks like in our building. If you're not familiar, it's a shared effort between our Student Center student team as well as custodial for the university. And so we've had some very specific detailed conversations about who's responsible for what, sharing the load, knowing that it's a team effort overall. In addition to having new responsibilities, making sure we're using the proper chemicals as recommended by the CDC. We also are putting out into the lounges, or have already done so actually, buckets of wipes, just similar to what you might see at the rec center, at the gym, where you all can wipe down your tables yourselves. So in addition to us walking through regularly throughout the day and sanitizing tables and surfaces and high touch areas, we also will have the ability for you all as you're coming in the building and using tables to wipe them down yourself too. The other kind of interesting technology piece I'll mention too is there's this technology called nanoseptic, which is basically a self-cleaning wrap, physical wrap that we've stuck in different places throughout the building, such as door handles. We'll have them on elevator buttons soon. So there's some other, I guess, form of technology that we're looking at in order to, again, really up our game in terms of cleaning and sanitizing. The other major change is access for our building. So with contact tracing in mind and wanting to keep our building as safe and keep you all safe, we are limiting access to the Student Center to only those that are Wayne State faculty, staff, and students, or those with what we're referring to as essential or academic business or needs. And so that would be a guest that maybe isn't a student, staff, or faculty, but needs to go up to see Hillel of Metro Detroit up on our 7th floor. Or they need to visit another office that might be open. So we are limiting access really to only those that need to be in the building, serving foremost our students. And so we actually will have a staff person, that's what this photo kind of shows, is a staff person at the door of the north entrance. Only the north entrance will be open for entry. Everything else is, of course, exit available, especially for egress. But we'll have a staff person, either a student or actually a full-time security guard that will be there asking everybody to show their one card as they enter. So no need to swipe, they just need to show your one card. Or again, if you are not affiliated but have some sort of university academic essential business, this could include getting something to eat at the dining locations that will be open and things like that. But that's a major change for sure. And then I also have posted here our new operating hours, which include being closed earlier each day throughout the year as well. Those of you not familiar, we used to be closed till, or excuse me, open until 2 a.m. And now we'll be closed until 10 p.m. during the week. And if you have any questions, feel free to post it in the chat bar as well. I want to make sure you all know that we want to address questions however we need to. The other piece that we'll mention is we also recognize as a student center that we, without being able to host physical events or meetings, we want to still be available and be a service to the campus however we can be. And so we wanted to share with you some different changes and adjustments we have to making sure our building is meeting the needs of our campus. So one of them would be we are actually hosting certain classes in our building. Right now it's 2 dance classes. They're going to take over the dance floors just a couple hours a week, knowing that those dance rooms can be available and students can better social distance in our larger spaces, as opposed to some of the dance rooms that are available currently. So hosting classes. And the other piece, and I included the statistic here, 1 in 5 college students say their mental health has significantly worsened under COVID-19. And we recognize that there's also a barrier to services, knowing that a lot of our students may be living with family, not in a private space, maybe not even having a private bedroom. So we are actually using some of our smaller conference rooms and making them available to CAPS to be able to allow students to use for private sessions. So students would still do a telecounseling session where they would use their computer. No counselor would be in the room with them, but they would have a private space that they might not otherwise have. So those are some new spaces or new uses to our space that we wanted to make sure to communicate to you all. Again, knowing that we want to make sure that we are a building for the campus and adjusting and adapting to whatever these new needs might be. So from here, Megan is going to chat about some other kind of changes to our services, particularly with social distancing and this fall in mind.
Hi, so my name is Megan. I am the Student Center Reservation Supervisor. So if you've ever made a reservation in EMS, you have probably received an email from me. I'll just quickly go over what services are available in the Student Center this fall. So food service, so you can still get your Starbucks, Taco Bell, Panda Express, Towers Cafe Express, and Midtown Market. Your ATMs, Michigan First, the Student Center Administration in Suite 11 on the lower level.
Wait, Megan, what's Midtown Market?
Oh, so glad you asked. So Midtown Market is the rebrand for Mad Anthony's on the 1st floor of the Student Center. So if you start seeing Midtown Market on some signage, that is the new Mad Anthony's, which we're really excited about. And they have all the delicious goodies and apparel for you this upcoming fall semester. And so then we do have the religious and spiritual centers, and then select departments are by appointment only. So we encourage you to reach out directly to those departments to see if they are working remotely or do have limited hours. But if you have any specific questions, you can feel free to email or call the Student Center as well, and we'll hopefully be able to get you that information as well. And then of course, our lounge space is open if you would like to study, just have a mental break, anything of that nature. And I do want to point out that don't forget to bring your one card and wear your mask for entry. So unfortunately, no physical events are permitted in Student Center managed spaces. So obviously this includes the Student Center, but it also includes the McGregor Memorial Conference Center, St. Andrews, and Community Arts Auditorium. However, we are happy to provide support in any way we can to help you and your organization succeed virtually. So that maybe means contacting SC Reservations directly or myself. So one of the platforms that we are overseeing is Team Lives. So Teresa did a great job explaining already, so I'm not going to go too much into the information, but this really is great for lectures, presentations, and guest speakers. So I know 32% of you in that poll that Brandon did earlier talked about a speaker lecture series. So this is definitely a platform that you may want to consider for the fall semester. So again, it's great for larger events and bigger crowds. It has a great Q&A feature, but not as engaging as Teams. So I know everyone else has been talking about ways to engage people. So that is just something to be mindful of, the limitation of Team Live. If you're interested in hosting a Team Live event, please contact me. My email is listed here, but if you lose my contact information, you can always contact SC Reservations at wayne.edu or the Student Center, and they'll be able to give you my contact information or forward your email along. So just note that there is 30 days notice and the event can only last for 4 hours. So that is just another limitation to be mindful of, and know that you have to do a little bit more planning ahead of time. Winter 2021 and beyond. So you can actually start now booking your reservations for any day after January 4th, 2021. You will see that you'll get an email from myself or one of the students at the Student Center that we are tentatively holding reservations. So it's technically not a confirmation, and you will instead see tentative on your email. But no, it's just a wording that no one else will be able to reserve your date, time, or location. So your reservation is secure. We're just waiting for further guidance of what we are able to have in the winter. But just know when you get an email from me or one of my students that your reservation is locked in place. So again, just log into ems.wayne.edu to make your reservation. I know it's a confusing tool for some people, especially if this is your first time as a leader of a student organization. So I just encourage you to please reach out if you have any questions about how to navigate EMS.
Okay, and there has been a great question that was posed in the chat bar back to our point about Midtown Market. And so I wanted to take a moment to mention that for those of you not familiar. And others here may be more experts than I am. I will be honest, I'm actually not a native Detroiter, but I do know that Anthony Wayne has a historical significance to the founding of Detroit, to Wayne State, hence Wayne State University. But he also has, I would say, a storied and negative history, particularly when it comes to our indigenous populations. And so that is why, partly why he had the nickname of Bad Anthony's, but also primarily why we have moved towards changing that name. If there's other contexts that even Dean Strauss or others on the meeting would like to share, but that's the primary reason, is his history, and knowing that that's not the history that we want reflected in Wayne State, especially the bounty of diversity that our student population brings. And so that's why we've moved forward with that change. Okay, my last point kind of speaks to this idea of the student center. So one of the main reasons why Megan and I are proud to work at the Student Center is recognizing the role that our building itself plays in building community for the campus. So whether you all are hosting a student organization leader, or excuse me, hosting a student organization meeting, a culture show, talked about a beauty pageant earlier. Those events and those programs are really what breathe life into the building and what foster that great sense of community and warrior pride. And we want to encourage you to continue to foster that sense of community. I know that there's been some great feedback and input already shared in this meeting of why you chose to get involved, ways that virtually, some best practices for virtual engagement. But we wanted to take a moment to talk about what that idea of community really means.
So if you could just write a few words in the chat bar, we would really appreciate to get the conversation going. And Chantel, billiards and gaming is actually currently closed at this time under the direction of the state. So once we have the approval, we will be opening that again. So we have a comment: community is working together towards a productive goal. A group of people living in the same place are having a particular characteristic in common. Community is giving back. A diverse people dwelling together in unity, coexisting. Community is a place/space in which people are comfortable with each other and work to enhance ways on life. A diverse group of people who may think they are different, but they are more similar. Depending on each other in the time of need.
Okay, I think that's,
yeah. Thank you for sharing.
yeah. Please feel free to continue adding to the comments. I think the last couple ideas are definitely areas we want to leave on of now more than ever, we need to look out for each other. And that's partly what we want to make sure to emphasize to you today from the Student Center team is looking out for one another, fostering that sense of care and concern. And that's what these new measures in place for our facility really are all about is, again, that warrior safe, warrior strong community aspect. And so I know we're running short on time for our kind of piece. And so we want to leave you with these final questions. And as I mentioned before, Teresa, Heather, the rest of the awesome DOSO team have already spoken about some specifics of how this can happen. But again, how can we continue to build community virtually? And how can you help others feel a part of our warrior strong community? So some of the ideas that were mentioned here were about feelings, right? It's not just mechanics or operations related to community. It's a feeling that you get for being cared and concerned and caring for others. So we want to make sure to kind of leave that with you as our final note of encouraging you to think about that. This can still happen virtually. It can still happen in many different ways, and in some ways can happen in even a more meaningful way. So we just want to leave you with that as well from the Student Center team.
Thank you so much, Katie and Megan, for that presentation. All their information will also is in the chat box as well. So put their information there. Up next, I know we're a little bit behind on time, but we'll still be out by 3 o'clock, hopefully. So up next we have Ryan Mitchell, who's the coordinator of student organization programs and fraternity and sorority life, to talk about the Student Activity Funding Board, or SAFB. So how you all can get money for some virtual programming. So go ahead, Ryan.
All right, Brandon, thanks for having me on. I am going to share my screen with you all because I'm going to show you all a couple web pages. Before I get into talking about Student Activities Funding Board, I do want to mention another program that we do have available for you. So let's go to share. Hopefully people can see my screen.
Yep.
Awesome, thanks, Brandon. So we do have a Warrior Safe is Warrior Strong Ambassador program. So you can see that the training dates have already passed. for the 12th and the 13th of August, but we are continuing to look for more volunteers for the Warrior Safe is Warrior Strong Ambassador program. This website is going to be updated over the next day or two with all of the resources from the training. You can see at the bottom of the page that there is a link to sign up to be an ambassador. So if you or your student organization wants to help for the first 2 weeks of classes, predominantly with personal protective equipment or PPE distribution, we would love to have you for that. Once you get the resources populated to this page, you'll be able to see all of the details for this program, but I did want to mention it in case students or student organizations were looking for some volunteer hours or some volunteer opportunities so that they can be involved. Next, I will move on to the Student Activities Funding Board page. So hopefully you can see that here. We are accepting funding applications for student organization events that will occur digitally. So registered student organizations will still be able to request funding for vendors, workshops, speakers, performers, etc. Most of the time, this will probably take place over Zoom or perhaps Microsoft Teams or another digital platform. You can also still receive funding for supplies for events that can be shared with students. So we do encourage you to apply for funding for your events, whether or not you're going to use a digital platform such as Zoom or Microsoft Teams to facilitate them. In the past, over the last year or so, if you did apply for SAFB funding and your event was canceled due to COVID-19, I do ask that you contact me directly and I will discuss with you how to get your event transferred into a digital format. But just a couple things that I'll note for you here today. You can see a list of student organization events that were scheduled for last year. So you can see some speakers and some workshops, an open mic night, different cultural performances. So if there are any other ideas that you have looking at this list or going back to the list that Teresa shared earlier regarding student organization resources and types of events you can facilitate, I will definitely work with you one-on-one to make sure that we can get you the resources that you need for your event. The funding application is simplified, which I'll show you shortly. We would still love to see a lot of these events happen, whether it's a cultural performance or a workshop or anything of that nature, but we would help you facilitate that via a digital format. But we do still have funds available for you there. I'll also mention that we do have all the dates and deadlines posted here. So there is a little bit of flexibility here if you happen to be a day or two late. But if you do have an event that you want to take place virtually on whenever the date is here, you can see in the first column. If you have an event that you want for after September 18th, we would have asked that you have the proposal in by today at noon. If there is something that sparks your interest at the end of this conversation today, once we're finished with this training, you can please let me know and I'll be able to work with you and hopefully get that in if there's something that you wanted to do sooner than the next date, which would be October 1st. But I can work with you offline one-on-one to hopefully get you the resources that you need. The minimum requirements for funding have not really changed. We just require that all of the events that are held digitally are free and open to any student and the public. We also require that your student organization is recognized on Get Involved, and you can click that link there to make sure that it is. And then you'll also have an event created and Get Involved. And if you click this link, you'll be able to see how to do that. So my information is here. You can also click this button to contact me directly if you do have any questions. So it is doso.wayne.edu/SAFB. That's the quick link to get to this particular page. And you can just click this button, contact the coordinator, that will contact me directly, and I can set up a time with you to talk about your needs. If you click on the apply for funding button, you can see a brief little form here. So we will ask that you check this box to say that you've read through the SAFB guidelines and you agree to adhere to the policies. We do need to know the name of your student organization, as well as a phone number for the contact person. If your event has a name, we would like to see that. If there's a type, we would like to get a feel for what type of event it is. So hopefully one of these categories fits your event. We'll ask what platform you're going to use to facilitate the event. So if it's going to be Zoom or Microsoft Teams, or if you would like an outside vendor to facilitate something via a different platform, we'll want to know that. And of course, the event date and time. So I will just put in a couple quick things here so that we can get to the next page. And obviously you have to check that box because it's required. Awesome. So the next section, the second of 3 pages, we would like to know your event purpose. So if you could describe in 3 to 5 sentences what exactly the purpose of your event is. We would also like to know all of the activities that are taking place at the event. So if you have a list or an itinerary, you can just copy and paste that there. And then your event promotion strategies. So how are you going to promote your event to students? Are you going to use social media such as Twitter and Facebook? Are you going to use word of mouth? Are you going to use a GroupMe? Things of that nature. So we would like to know all of the ways that you're going to promote this event. So I'll put something in each of these boxes to move to the next page. And on this last page, we would like to know what the event costs are. So under event expense 1, we would like you to describe all of the expenses. So if there is a service that needs to be contracted, whether it's a speaker or a performer, we would need to know their contact information. So under event expense 1, you have a DJ who is going to be the DJ for the event, and they're requesting $200 for their time, and then their email address is djjojo@gmail.com, whatever the case might be. So for each event expense you have, we just want to have you listed here. So in the past, you may have seen different categories such as food expenses and supplies and things like that, but we've simplified the form knowing that a lot of those expenses aren't going to be covered anyway because events are going to be virtual. If there is a contracted service such as James's magical show via YouTube, you can just copy and paste that there. So as much information as you have about the vendors or the services that you would like to be provided at this event, if you can just put that there, that would be great. And then we will ask that you include a total event cost. So summarize all of the expenses that are listed here. If you have more than 5 event expenses, which is not typical, then we would ask for you to contact me directly to get some additional spaces to put some more event costs there. And that will actually be the conclusion of your proposal. Once you've submitted it, you'll receive a response within 1 to 2 weeks, depending on the dates and deadlines. You'll get information sent directly back to you through Get Involved, and it'll say whether or not your proposal has been approved, what expenses you have that are approved, and things of that nature. So everything is conducted through the Get Involved platform, and you will receive communication there. So you will log in to Get Involved to access the funding proposal, and then whoever submits the proposal in the student organization will be the main point of contact for the event's costs and logistics. So with that, I will actually stop sharing my screen and take a look and see if there are any questions. Brandon, if you don't mind helping out with that, if there's anything that you see in there, that'd be great.
Hey Ryan, there's a question. Okay, it says it's acceptable to request funding for like gift cards, for examples, for drawings, in lieu of having, like for example, someone said Grubhub gift cards, drawings, for general body meetings versus like having food, like an in-person event.
Okay, that's a great question. So we do still have to abide by the university's policies and procedures manual. So if there are specific event expenses that are maybe questionable like that, especially related to food, I would ask that you work with me one-on-one so that we can see what the best way of getting you the funding that you need is, if it is even possible. But like Brandon said, SAFB events have to be free and open to the public. So any private event or any meeting would not necessarily be eligible for funding unless it was actually an event.
Rachel, I would suggest just reaching out to Ryan for that, for any of like those type of questions to see what can be done for those.
Yeah, and what I'll also add is that we do have expenses in terms of things that can or cannot be approved. Some of those things listed on SAFB's page, but unfortunately we can't list every single possible expense that someone would request to get covered. So for some of those things, then if you, for example, write that you want gift cards in your funding proposal for, you know, an expense, I will reach out to you to let you know if that expense is even possible to be covered or not based on university policy. And then if we can't get those types of things covered, then I can work with you to find alternatives before your proposal gets denied. So I'll do my best to make sure that everything is reviewed before it gets to the student funding board. That way we can make sure that we're maximizing your opportunities for funding.
Are there any other questions for Ryan? I think this is a really great way to be creative with this upcoming semester being online, having those programs online. So think outside the box, like we've been saying throughout the presentation. Think of ways that you can still engage your students. And if you don't know, still just reach out to Ryan to apply for that funding. It might be something you've never done in the previous years, but it might become a tradition even when we're back on campus eventually. So consider that. Thank you again, Ryan. So next up, we have myself and Heather again to talk about FestiFall and virtual FestiFall. So this has been a question that I've been receiving a lot via email. So I'm gonna go ahead and just share my screen here. Okay, so back on the Get Involved website. So a lot of you have received email. So I'm gonna show you what it looks like, both how as a regular student just coming to FestiFall virtually, and then how it also looks like for you as the person potentially hosting your FestiFall table, quote unquote. So to get to FestiFall, you can either click on the link in the email, or eventually these boxes will change and say FestiFall, probably change one of these. But it's FestiFall on the Get Involved platform. Essentially, it's just another event. So if you type in FestiFall into the box, it'll come up right here. It'll get you all the great information of when it is. September 1st from 4 to 6. Hopefully you know that. That's the first day of class. It's a little bit different than previous years. We thought it'd be best to not do everything of orientation part 2 on one day, but we're actually going to do it on the first day of class during that 2-hour time block. It is online. There's a little brief description here. And you know, we have student organizations coming. We have departments and auxiliary organizations that we have within this portal. We also invited athletics, housing, and whatnot. So it's not only going to be a student organization event, but also a campus-wide event as well. So Heather, feel free to stop me at any time if you want to chime in to anything that I'm missing when I'm talking about this. So on the back end, so you'll have, let's see, what was I trying to get? So we've invited a lot of these organizations. We have 63 organizations signed up so far. So typically we have between 100 and 200 organizations RSVP'd for FestiFall. We definitely want that number to kind of get up a little bit. But we're going to show you how to essentially, I guess, RSVP for the event and essentially sign up for it. So Heather, do you want to walk through that? I mean, I'm doing two things at once right now. So if you want to go ahead and just chime in with that, that'll be great.
That's okay. Yeah, do you want to just say where I'm going, or okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Since I have Kat pulled up, let me share Kat's screen again. And then Teresa, don't worry, I'm not actually going to submit this. I'm just going to show it. There it is. Share. I almost hit leave. So when you go to your organizations page, so clicking manage or manage from the front end screen, this is what's called your organization homepage. It's super easy to sign up. Upcoming virtual fair events. So anything that you have been invited to will show up in here. You can see FestiFall 2020. This is also an easy way to click to preview the event because even after you've RSVP'd and signed up for it, it'll still stay here so that you can quickly get to the event page. All you need to do is hit sign up, put in a brief description of what your organization is, invite incoming students, prospective new members, what's going on there. You do have a 200 character limit that includes spaces, so try to get the most bang for your buck out of there. And if you are hosting an online meeting, make sure that you have the meeting information, and then you'll post the online link here. So you can use Zoom, you can use Discord, you can use Skype, or Microsoft Teams. So what I would recommend doing is before you go to sign up for FestiFall, go into whatever account, whatever video conferencing tool you're going to be using, set up the event in there, the meeting invite in there. So remember, it's September 1st from 4 to 6. Set that up in Zoom or whichever service you're using. So that way you have the URL to easily post into here. You'll post it in there. And then all you have to do is hit submit. There's no approval, there's no denial. It's just submit and you're there. And then after that, Brandon, do you want me to show you then the preview?
I think I fixed I don't know, my computer was freezing for a second, so I think I can hop on if that's cool, unless you want.
Okay, I'll stop sharing.
Okay, sorry about that, everyone.
That's okay.
Okay, so once you're on, once you signed up, and so you're on the FestiFall page now, on the day of, let me go back to the regular event. So once on the day of the event, so it looks like for everyone else, if you go on the web page right now, it'll look like a regular event. You've already signed up. But then this box will pop up eventually to join a virtual fair. So around that time, it'll eventually allow you to do that.
They will never see this box. At the time of the event page will actually change.
Okay. And it also will be on the homepage, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so on the homepage here as well, there'll be like a ribbon of some sort that says there's also a virtual event happening. But I want to show you in the back end what it will look like when we preview this fair. So first off, all of the 63 or so organizations that have RSVP'd already are going to show up on this list. So again, we have the title and the time on top. There will also always be a virtual help desk that I will be overseeing. You can click on this link. You can hop on and talk to me about, hey, is African American Psychology Student Association on here? And I'll be like, yeah, they're right here. So go ahead and click on that link. So, or you can ask any other questions if you're a new student or if you have, this is primarily, I would say, for incoming, any student that is more so casually strolling around to see what organizations are here. But also as a student organization, you can also visit the help desk and ask questions if you have. So there are a few ways that this will show. So we have our auxiliary organizations and we have our student organizations as well. If you have provided a Zoom link or a Teams link or Google Hangouts, whatever it may be, there'll be a Meet Online button. So if you click on this link, it'll pop up and you'll be right live into that session. If you did not provide something like that, it'll just be a regular contact button, like for example, B+. They don't want to be live during FestiFall, but there's a contact button there as well. Your blurb is all right here in this gray box in the middle, your 200 character limit blurb. In our chat sessions, or in the recording that you may have received with me talking about how to register, I also said you might want to include your, your Zoom ID and potentially if you have a password on there. Something that I also want to recommend is that you should potentially authenticate like how we did for this meeting. So for this meeting, you couldn't hop on the Zoom call unless you had a Wayne State Access ID and password. It wouldn't necessarily allow any public to get in. That will prevent any Zoom bombing or things like that, but it will let you in that meeting if you're logged in with your Access ID as well. There is also a button to request to join. So if there is this button here, then you might, as a student organization leader for that platform, you'll get some prospective members requests within your roster as well, and you'll get an automated email as there. All you do is click on this, and then it'll have them request to join the organization as well. So,
real quick, Brandon.
Yep.
There's a question in the thing about the request to join feature showing up for your org. Certain organizations do not have the request to join button because of how they're set up. So for example, fraternities and sororities, they have a certain type of recruitment process. So we've actually turned it off so that you cannot request to join the organization. You actually have to go through the recruitment process and get an invitation to the organization. So if you think that you should have the request to join, just please message myself and we'll figure out why you don't have it or why you should or shouldn't have it. Also, if you just use the contact button rather than the meet online, the contact is going to be the primary contact for the organization. So make sure you have the appropriate primary contact set.
Thanks, Heather.
The request to join is for the organization, not the board. It's just as a member. Sorry, chat box stuff.
No worries. So I'm not really sure. I mean, if student clicks on the organization, like the name on top, it'll directly put them to your organization organization platform on Get Involved. So all that information is here. They also can join with the blue button here. The contact button will also do the same as if you click the contact button on this list here. But this is kind of what it looks like. This is actually what it will look like. this only shows, from what it seems like, 20 organizations at once. It is sorted alphabetically from what it seems like through this platform, but as the number grows here, we'll have more organizations popping up here as well. Heather, is there anything else you wanted to chime in and add? Are there any additional questions?
Yeah, can you click on the organizations page again just one more time?
Sure.
One thing to note is that some of you may want to update your about section.
Oh, yes.
So that's just in your management tools. New thing that they've added to the platform is that you can actually embed video into your description. So all you need to do is, it's YouTube or Vimeo, but you can just paste the link into your description and it'll add a fun video. So if you, before FestiFall begins, want to have a cool, this is our organization, meet everybody, what is this organization about, you can also provide that into there. It's kind of a fun little addition to your organizations page.
Thanks, Heather. Are there any additional questions about virtual FestiFall? You may have noted that in the emails that we've sent out in the communication, that Student Organization Day, which is typically an event that we host 2 weeks after FestiFall, will be canceled this year. We are going to be looking into ways on how we can continue using this virtual fair feature to maybe potentially doing it later on in the semester, or again for Winterfest in January as well. All right, if there are no other questions about FestiFall, we'll move on. Oh, wait, let's see if there's something there. There is a question from NECA in the chat box there, I believe.
Organization description on your page shouldn't have a character limit, but FestiFall description does have a character limit and there's no way to extend it. Question about what most orgs are using. Most of the ones that I've seen have come through have been through Zoom.
And thanks, Dean Strauss, for that. We're going to figure out how we're going to do it through Student Org Day, through Homecoming Week. We'll have some week-long events, September 28th or so, with Spirit Week for that. Okay, let me stop sharing my screen. So I just want to show, I mean, that's about it. What we're going to do, so we have last 5 minutes or so for questions. I'm going to post up an email on here. Those that have checked in, if you haven't checked in, please make sure you click on the link that's in the chat box there. We're going to send out automated, there'll be like a end of event survey through the Get Involved platform that we'll be sending out as well. And also we'll do a random draw for 10 students to get those Amazon gift cards that I promised y'all there as well. But all of our contact information is here on the screen. Please, thank you so much for being on here. This will be recorded. Please reach out to us if you have any questions. But we'll be definitely posting the recording. I'll send it out probably to the student organizations as well, those to RSVP'd, and as well posting it on our social media, or sorry, on our Get Involved page as well. But we'll be here to stick around for a little bit if there are any questions, but thank you for joining us today, and feel free to shoot us an email. And I'm going to go ahead and enable unmuting. So if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi, yeah, I had a question just about FestiFall. So I know that you guys are going to be sending out emails to like newer students or just students this semester to like partake in our virtual FestiFall. Is there anything else we can do as an org to get, you know, our club out there? I know that we have like the page with all of our different orgs listed, but is there any other way that we can get our club out there, or any other suggestions?
So you can always use the promotion link that's on both the Get Involved page and on our website to promote different events and things, different events, opportunities, that kind of stuff going on. That will help with social media and the Get Involved newsletter. The newsletter, it depends on space a lot of times, and we do have over 500 organizations. I think right now with registration, we're at like 370 organizations registered already for this fall. So I do, depending on what comes in, I may have to limit what goes into the newsletter. Right now, it's not too much of an issue. Same thing with social media. It's going to depend on space and how much time you give me to share your stuff. So if you give me more time to share it, more likely you will have it shared.
Okay, thank you.
There's still about 66 participants on the call. Are there any final questions before we sign off?
Hey, Brandon, I did put in there that for folks, we did on our DOSO homepage, we tried to push all the important resources to the main page, one click away. And we do have a student organization consulting form where it gets directed to a member of the team who can assist you right away. So in essence, what we're trying to do is to use that form in place of a walk into the office. So please utilize that form. And then in addition, I mentioned in the chat, but the food pantry is going to be used as a distribution center. So if you have things that you want distributed, we can make arrangements for that. We kind of want to recreate the DOSO office at the food pantry.
Team Charles, did you want to mention anything on the welcome back bags at all? I didn't know if you wanted to mention any of that.
Say that again, Brandon. I didn't.
On the welcome back bags, the PPE and all that. Ryan kind of chimed in on the ambassadors, but I'm not sure if you want to talk about the August 26th event.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we did, this has been fun. So we developed what we're calling the PPE swag bag, and it began as a brainstorm to provide students knickknacks and goodies that Brandon's got it, that they would otherwise receive at FestiFall, since we can't have an in-person FestiFall. And so in there are PPE related goodies, hand sanitizer, tissues, et cetera, and 3 face masks that each student will receive, as Heather is holding those up there. So we have 5,000 bags. So on the 26th, we're going out in the community to our extension sites. We'll be at ATEC, we'll be at Macomb Center, we'll be at Schoolcraft, we'll also be down on main campus. And then our Warrior Safe is Warrior Strong student ambassadors will be distributing those out as people come to campus in the first 2 weeks of class. And then the 3rd and 4th weeks of the semester, we're doing some reward programs for thanking people for wearing a face mask. And all residence hall students will receive a goodie bag as they move in. And then throughout the semester, we'll be recognizing and thanking people with giveaways. And so, yeah, we know that there'll be some folks that never step foot onto campus this fall. You know, about the last number I heard, and I'll get an update later this week, was 92% of the classes are online. So yes, and we do, these are really comfortable, just as everybody's still on the call real quick. So we have our Wayne State face mask, and they are machine washable, and they've got the adjustable strap. So proud warrior.
Alrighty, well, it's past 3 o'clock. Again, I want to thank you and thank everyone for being on the call. Thanks to all of our presenters, and I hope that you have hope you have a great last few weeks of, I guess, summer vacation, and continue on. And like Dean Shaw said, Warrior Safe is Warrior Strong, so we'll continue on with that. Take care.